So what did you want to show in this exhibition at Guggenheim about China?
No, so the idea behind our exhibition, Art in China After 1989, Theater of the World, was to take this story of what people understand as contemporary Chinese art and recast it really as a global story about how the world changed in the years between 1989 and 2008 and how Chinese artists were witnesses to and in fact agents of that transformation. These are 2 decades in which China undergoes massive economic change. At the same time, they're really the decades in which the international art system that we know today kind of comes into emergence. And through their participation in biennales, through kind of resettling abroad and bringing information back to China, and then finally kind of through the emergence of a system for contemporary art in China during this period, you really see the birth of a whole new order.
But do you think people have a wrong idea about Chinese art today?
Of course, not to speak ill of the market, of which in which we're all sort of implicated in different ways, but because there were in this period not strong museums and institutions inside of China, the story of artistic practice in China in the 90s and into the 2000s was often told by the market and sort of for the market, and it wasn't necessarily the story that the artists themselves understood and were telling. So we tried to shed new light on positions that are very important to artists in China. Conceptual practices, innovative forms of exhibition making, even new kind of institutional transformations in the academies and throughout the society that were happening in this period. So trying to get away from a very basic kind of auction catalog history and towards something deep. And of course this is difficult because people don't necessarily know China. They don't know the complex history. They don't understand how nuanced actually the political situation is. So we tried to, of course it's a show about art and about artists, but you're also trying at the same time to make the context kind of comprehensible in a way that will make the art as vital and relevant and powerful as we know it to be.
And it's a very complex show, showing the complex offer of China, no?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't want it to be a comprehensive overview. We wanted it to be a series of arguments about the history of art in China during this period. So, for example, we started in 1989 and not where the story often begins in 1979. We left out the 80s, which were a very romantic and vital decade, but we decided that it's really in 89, after Tiananmen, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, with the advent of digital communications, that the world sort of changes, and that we wanted to look at art kind of in that context. And then throughout the show, I mean, the show is divided into 6 sections, and each one is making a few arguments at the same time. I mean, the third section is about realism, right? There's just a very powerful realist artistic pedagogy still taught in all the academies. And we were trying to argue that instead of being academic formalism, this was actually a way that artists engaged with the transformations around them. And so we juxtaposed it with something like the Big Tail Elephant Group, who are essentially guerrilla performance artists working in the streets. We're trying to say that both of these tendencies were ways of thinking about massive urbanization that was happening at the time. So that's one example. In each of these 6 sections, we were trying to make a case for what happened at each kind of particular moment along this 20-year horizon.
Merci.